Hello parents and carers of Year 5. This is a quick video to help you with supporting reading at home. I will go through how we teach reading in Year 5 at school, and that will hopefully give you some helpful hints for your children. So how is reading taught at St Michael's? So first, we use our Power of Reading novels in English. These are books that we use every term, and we base all of our writing and some of our guided reading lessons on this book. We teach guided reading lessons daily, and we use lots of resources, mainly at the minute from Literacy Shed Plus, which you would have noticed in lockdown. Children have the opportunity to read with teachers and TAs. We always encourage reading across the curriculum, and we also use Accelerated Reader. Accelerated Reader allows children to sit a reading test, which then gives them their reading age and reading score. This is how we assess them and how we then give them the book that they bring home. They then can take a quiz on this book when they have finished reading it to see if they've understood it properly and if they are ready to move on to a new book. In Key Stage 2, we have reading domains, and they are broken down into the following: give and explain the meaning of words in context, retrieve and record information or identify key details from fiction and non-fiction, summarise main ideas from more than one paragraph, make inferences from the text, explain and justify inferences with evidence from the text, predict what might happen from details stated or implied, identify or explain how information or narrative content is related and contributes to meaning as a whole, identify and explain how meaning is enhanced through choice of words and phrases, and make comparisons within the text. So in Year 5, we would teach each of these content domains by the end of the year. So children have covered each of these domains by the time they get to Year 6. At St Michael's, we follow the Vipers skills for reading. So you have vocabulary, inference, prediction, explanation, retrieval and summarise. And you will see how each of these can relate to each content domain. So content domain 2A is linked to vocabulary, content domain 2B links to retrieval, content domain 2C links to summarise section, content domain 2D links to the inference, content domain 2E links to prediction, content domain 2F links to the explanation, content domain 2G and 2H link to the explanation again as well. So that's how the content domain links with the Vipers skills that we teach and we follow at St Michael's. I'm going to take you through each of the content domains, explain what they mean and give you a few example questions and also show you a text and a question to go with that text too. So we're going to start off with 2A, and that's give and explain the meaning of words in context. So this means working out the meaning of words that you don't know. So you do this by looking at the words or phrases you are unsure of in context. This means using the story so far, the sentences around the word and what you already know about the plot to figure out what the word must mean. And here are some example questions. What do the words and suggest about the character, setting and mood? Which word tells you that? Which key word tells you about the character, setting and mood? Find one word in the text which means. Find and highlight the word that is the closest in meaning to. Find a word or phrase which shows or suggests that. Here is an example of a chapter which is called Double Life. And here is a question that links to the content domain of meaning of words in context. The quartz sphere was nothing special. Which of these words is closest in meaning to the phrase nothing special? Select one. So the children would find where it says the court spear was nothing special, have a read around that sentence and see if there's any clues which would help them to work out what that word means out of the ones here below. Content domain 2B is to retrieve and record information. This means finding key pieces of information within the text that you are reading. To do this, the children look through the text for a specific answer. With these questions, the answer you're looking for is always in the text somewhere. You just have to find it. Example questions of retrieval. How would you describe this story or text? What genre is it? How do you know? How did? How often? Who had? Who is? Who did? What happened to? What can you learn from this section? Give one example of. The story is told from whose perspective? So as it said, it's really important for the children to remember for a retrieval question, the answer is always in the text. They just have to be able to find it. Here is an example of some retrieval questions that are based on the same chapter that we just looked at previously. This time the questions say, which weapons would make Katana truly unstoppable? So the children would find that piece of information and take it from the text and write it down. Name the 3 gems that according to the text are rarer than topaz, which you can see here. It says topaz was rare, not as rare as diamond, sunstone or fire opal. So that would be the 3 that the children would write down. And what lay on the workstation next to the court spear? Tick 1. So again, the children would have to read through the text and find which one of those things was lying on the workstation. Next we have reading domain 2C, which is summarise main ideas from more than one paragraph. This means summing up what has been read. The children do this by reading the text, picking out the key points that are really important and then giving a quick rundown of the text's main ideas. Our example questions here are, can you number these events 1 to 5 in the order that they happened? What happened after? What was the first thing that happened in the story? Can you summarise in a sentence the opening, middle, end of the story? In what order do these chapter headings come in the story? Here is an example of a text. And here are some questions to support the text for summarising. As you can see, the first question says, which of the following statements best summarises the first paragraph? Tick 1. So it gives children some ideas and they have to decide which one best sums up that first paragraph. Question 2 asks them to write a new title for the chapter based on what they have read. Moving on to content domain 2D, which is make inferences from the text and explain and justify inferences with evidence from the text. This means picking up ideas from the text that are not always written in the text itself. The children do this by reading the text as if they are a detective. They're not looking for what is there, they are looking for what is meant by it. For example, if the text was to say, Jenny's face was red, she wrinkled her brow and began to shout, you could infer that Jenny is feeling angry. Example questions of inference. Find and copy a group of words which show that. How do these words make the reader feel? How does the paragraph suggest this? How do the descriptions of show that they are how can you tell that? What impressions of do you get from these paragraphs? What voice might these characters use? What was thinking when? And who is telling the story? Here we have another paragraph which is linked to inference. The question here says, What impression is the reader given about the setting of this extract? Discuss two aspects using evidence to support your answer. So here we have Philip stood in the shadow of the dark arch and looked out. He saw before him a great square surrounded by tall, irregular buildings. In the middle was a fountain, whose waters, silver in the moonlight, rose and fell with a gentle splashing sound. A tall tree, close to the archway, cast a shadow of its trunk across the path. He listened, but there was nothing to listen to, except the deep night silence and the changing soft sound the fountain made. His eyes grew accustomed to the dimness, showing that he was under a heavy domed roof supported on large, huge square pillars, and to each side of him he saw dark doors, firmly fastened. Philip did not exactly feel frightened, but he did not exactly feel brave either. So the children would have to think about that paragraph and have a think about what impression do they get from that setting. So they might want to mention about the irregular buildings. They might say that the shadows make it sound a little bit creepy, and also the fact that there was nothing to listen to. Content domain 2E is predicting what might happen from details stated and implied. This means making a logical and reasonable guess about what could happen next. The children do this by looking at what has already happened, what the characters may have hinted is coming up, or what has been implied by the author's use of language. Here are some example questions. From the cover, what do you think the text is going to be about? What is happening now? What happened before this? What will happen after? What does this paragraph suggest will happen next? What makes you think this? Do you think the choice of setting will influence how the plot develops? Do you think will happen? Yes, no, or maybe. Explain your answer using evidence from the text. Here we have a paragraph, again linked now to prediction. This question asks, what do you think the two men intended to do? And why do you think this? This paragraph is discussing that there are two men heading out to shore on their boat and they're setting sail. When you read the rest of the paragraph, you begin to wonder what it is that they are doing. So the children would have to predict why they went out to shore. So they may say that the men intended to do some fishing, because that is what people do when they head out on a boat, and they headed out on an early summer morning, so they may be able to catch lots of fish at that time if other people aren't out on their boat. That is a sensible prediction, and it's a reasonable guess. We then have content domain 2F and 2H. The first is identify and explain how information or narrative content is related and contributes to meaning as a whole, and the second is then make comparisons within the text. To do this, children need to explain how certain parts of the text build or change an overall message or meaning, say how characters or events within the story are similar or different from each other, and how a single character changes over the course of a story. Example questions are: why is the text arranged in this way? What structures has the author used? What is the purpose of this text? Is the use of effective? The mood of the character changes throughout this text. Find and copy the phrases which show this. What is the author's point of view? What effect does have on the audience? How does the author engage the reader here? Which words and phrases did use effectively? Here is an example of a chapter which is linked to these two content domains. And here are examples of questions. Who do you think the author has written this text for? Give a reason for your answer. The children may also be asked to match each part of an extract with a direct quotation from the text. So here they have got the setting, past events, action and character description, and they have quotes from the text on this side that they would then have to match them up to. The last of the content domains is 2G, which is identify and explain how meaning is enhanced through choice of words and phrases. This means spotting examples of ambitious vocabulary and figurative language within the text. When the children find them, they must think about why the author has made those vocabulary choices and how they give a certain meaning to the text. Example questions. What do the words and suggest about the character, setting and mood? Which word tells you that? Which keyword tells you about the setting, character and mood? Find one word in the text which means. Find and highlight the word that is closest in meaning to, and find a word or phrase which shows or suggests that. Some example questions. Not a cloud appeared in the high blue vault of the sky. What does this phrase suggest about the sky? Or, find and copy an example of personification from the text and explain how it contributes to meaning. So, just to go over the expectations for Year 5, it is an expectation that children in Year 5 read every night for a minimum of 20 minutes, evidenced by an adult signature in their learning journal. It is really beneficial for the children to read aloud to an adult. This is so they learn how to read with expression, they notice punctuation, and also so they can correct any mistakes that they make. Children will earn house points on a daily basis for their home reading, with additional points for completing a whole week. We also have Buster's Book Club. This is an additional challenge where the classes compete to have read the most extra minutes, those over 20 minutes, and the winning class is awarded at the end of the week during the assembly. The data for Buster's Book Club is taken on a Thursday, so please ensure that your child has completed this challenge by that day. I hope that has been helpful and that you now understand the different content domains, the different types of questions that your children will be asked in relation to those domains. You will find a PDF document next to this video with question prompts you can use when reading with your children at home. It looks like this: Key Stage 2 Reading Vipers.